You're listening to the Miracles in Meat podcast. I'm Shane Thibodaux, a fourth-generation butcher at one of the oldest meat markets in the world. My great-grandfather started this business by slaughtering one cow or pig at a time and selling the cuts door-to-door on horse and buggy. Today, our products are enjoyed across the globe. I will attempt to give you some insight as to how we got here and explore the challenges we've had along the way. At Bourgeois, our mission is to preserve our heritage generation after generation through legendary Cajun flavors and the development of relationships, not customers. Since 1891, Bourgeois has maintained age-old culinary traditions that fuel the South Louisiana lifestyle. Over the past 133 years, our Cajun products have gained global recognition, and for tens of thousands of folks around the world, the Bourgeois Cajun Lady logo is a symbol of home. Today, the fourth-generation butchers sit at the 9-foot maple block with loyal customers to discuss the adventures, skills, and passions that guide each of their legacies. These conversations will become priceless resources for future generations of any industry. This is our way of maintaining the spirit, purpose, and traditions of our lost arts in a world of change. 133 years, 4 generations. We're just getting started. All right, I'm Shane. This is episode 5 of the Miracles in Meat podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Beau and his grandpa, Earl Clement.
Yeah, so Earl's my mom's father, and he was like a second dad to me growing up. So shortly after my parents got divorced, when I was about 3, my grandmother, his wife, passed away unexpectedly, and we lived with Papa for a while him and my mom and a couple of his buddies they built us a house in Houma. And then every summer growing up, I remember we would all pack me, my sister, my mom, and Papa into his camper, and we would go all over the country. So we've been to the Grand Canyon, to the Florida beaches. We've been to Yellowstone, Washington, D.C., all over. We'd be gone the whole summer. So my mom was a teacher and Papa was a principal, so we all had the summer off. I have so many wonderful memories of those summers, which is why I also have a camper, and we go camping with my kids, and it's great family time. So Earl is also the only person left that I know that knew my father's grandfather, which his name was Valerie Jean-Batiste Bourgeois. He's the OG that started all this, and he actually passed away before my dad was born, so he didn't even get to know him.
Yeah, and I knew Pa Earl not just as Beau's grandpa, but he was my very first principal at Schriever School from maybe kindergarten to 2nd grade. So I have some pretty cool memories from back then, and we'll get into those later on in the podcast. Let's get started. All right, here we go. I'm Shane. Got Beau here with Beau's grandfather, Earl Clement. Mr. Earl, I'm going to call you Pa Earl. Because that's how I feel about you. And we start all of these off the same way. We ask our customers what their first or earliest memories are of the Bourgeois brand, the building, the products, going in the building, tasting something, whatever your first memory about Bourgeois Meat Market was. We'd like to hear that.
Well, I guess one of the original customers of Bourgeois Meat Market. I was born in 1939. My dad was in the service, so we moved in with my grandparents way back when, so when Dad was in the service. And I remember my grandmother buying products from, actually raw meat from the original Bourgeois, Lester's father. I don't have vague memories of it because I was a kid, but he would pass in his, I don't remember for sure what it looked like, but it seems like it was an old bus. And he would take his products. He would basically take an order. None of us had electricity at the time. So he would take the orders of what you wanted for the next week. And then he would deliver the meat the following week. He was I can't say that I interacted with him. I didn't. I was a kid, a very young kid, as a matter of fact. But I know my grandmother did. And they actually looked forward to the meat coming in. they had no way of refrigerating meat. We didn't have electricity, so they couldn't even preserve meat for any length of time. So that's my first memories of Bourgeois meat market.
So was it special, the meat, getting the meat and knowing that it's going to come and go?
It was, but as it turns out, I guess he must have figured out that when the Iceman was passing, we had
the Iceman.
Yeah, we didn't have a refrigerator, no electricity, so there was a guy who would come with blocks of ice, and every week he would ask you how much you wanted, whether you wanted a quarter's worth, 50 cents worth, or whatever, and he would just chop up the meat blocks and put it in your ice box. Basically, that was how you refrigerated meat. So it kept the product pretty good for that period of time. But you couldn't freeze anything. There was no refrigeration to do that. So it would pretty much be a 1 or 2 meal serving of product that he would give.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, though, we were 13 of us living in the house. So I guess it was a pretty good order.
That's so cool. So I have so many questions, but let's start with, you don't remember the cuts of meat that you were getting?
Man, I eat enough number 7 steaks. It seems like that's all I can remember is Grandma buying number 7 steaks. I don't think it was ever the roast or anything like that. It was and I don't really remember that for sure, but I know why I remember it, but I know darn well I had some number 7 steaks.
So what's funny is like calf cuts are kind of dying off a little bit in the last 20 years or so, but 7s are still really popular.
They were good eats, man.
How'd she cook them? Or well, first of all, who cooked and how did they cook them?
My grandmother, of course, was a cook. She cooked daily. Again, you couldn't preserve food, so she had to cook every day. My grandfather worked in the fields, so he had to get up, and he was off and running every morning, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. He had to go to work. And so at that point in time, she'd start cooking.
Did they have natural gas yet?
No, we had no electricity, no running water, and no natural gas.
So wood stove.
We had a wood stove. Toward the latter part of but that was toward the end of World War II when they got what's called what we would call the coal oil schools, the kerosene.
Okay.
And but at that point in time, it was simply a wood stove, and they'd have to get the fire going on the stove. How she cooked on that, I have no idea.
What time did she wake up to have breakfast ready for Grandpa and light a fire? And
she had an early morning every single morning, and she prepared food for all 13 of us, and had to wash clothes on a washboard. Had to. And you had to the water was scarce.
Got a cistern?
We had a couple of cisterns, but even still, when you had dry periods of time when you had to, kind of preserve water because there was no other source of water.
Yeah,
you couldn't. There was no such thing as well water over here. You couldn't get good, clean well water. You couldn't drill wells that deep to get good water. So we just had to preserve water, watch how you wash. We had to bathe in the same water one after the other.
What was the sleeping situation like?
I was a young kid, and I remember I personally was sleeping on chairs. They'd put chairs together, and you'd sleep on top of the chairs.
How many bedrooms in the house?
As I recall, they had three bedrooms in the house. But we had, my family was there, my mother and me and her sister and her husband and 4 kids. We had a cousin, Norman. We had a great-grandfather who was living there. So
wow.
we all were in the house. And that was just, prior to World War II, things were so much different than they are now. I mean, you just didn't have the services that could help you. You didn't have anything. You had to provide for yourselves. So we did a lot for ourselves. I guess that's where we learned to do what we had to do.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a garden?
We had a field. Yeah, we had a garden. every year, every summer, that pretty much was what you had to do, and you had to preserve food. You had to can food. I remember my grandmother having we didn't put them in jars. We actually put them in cans, and she had a special kind of canner where you could purchase the cans with a lid to put on top, and you had to sterilize the can. You had to sterilize all of whatever you would put in it. So we put up beans and peas and okra, and I don't remember if I was putting up tomatoes, but we always had so many tomatoes we didn't know what to do with them, But all of those products we had to can and store them. We had walls and walls and walls of cans that stacked up on one another, and if you didn't sterilize them properly, you'd hear them popping every once in a while. They'd blow.
Wow. Did y'all have any animals? Hogs? Or?
Yeah, mostly, yes. We had hogs. We had cows. The cows weren't to eat. The cows were milk cows.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a lot of chicken. We ate chicken. That was almost a daily thing because at least you could keep them alive till you cook them.
Yeah.
And we had, you're mentioning it now, but we had acres and acres of corn.
Ah.
And we'd break the corn late summer and stack them in a corn crib. Basically a big building where you would just fill up dry corn. You'd break the corn when it was dry and just throw it into a corn crib. And you could use that corn to feed your cow. You could use, feed the chickens, stuff like that.
Nice.
Where was the property?
What's that?
Where was the property? Where'd you live?
At the time, we were living off of Highway 1, going toward Labadeville.
Okay.
Before the Bruley Road. I don't know if you know what that is.
All right.
But the property that we had that we were farming on was my grandfather and his brother, Ivis Adams. And there were fields and fields, like maybe 40 arpent long of just corn and peas and that kind of thing.
How much of that was to eat versus to sell?
We didn't sell anything.
It was all for y'all to eat?
That was for us to eat. We had, Grandpa had a garden on the side of the house where we were living. The corn came mostly from the field. The stuff that we ate, the beans, the peas, the okra, those kinds of things, that was in our garden. The corn was across the street in a big field, and that's where we got the cow. And we had a lot of corn, and we'd feed the cattle and chicken and stuff.
What was your favorite thing that your grandma cooked?
So steak.
How'd she cook them? She smothered them down?
Smothered them down. We ate a lot of rabbit. We ate rabbits also. The property.
Y'all raised them or y'all would hunt them?
We'd hunt them. We didn't grow any rabbit. We didn't grow any rabbits. We'd hunt them. But the property back then, when you look back, and it's hard to realize that I've been around for 85 years almost, but things have changed so tremendously. And back then, you could almost walk out in your yard and hunt.
Yeah.
It wasn't because
especially if you had all them crops.
Yeah.
Probably attract.
It's not like you had. It's not like you had to go miles to look for a place to hunt. It was there. So that changed in my lifetime. Right now you got neighbors one on top of one another. You can't hunt anymore.
Anything else besides rabbits that y'all would?
We raised hogs. Every year you'd have a boucherie. Wintertime, we'd do a boucherie where you could, again, we had no way to preserve it except we had the big cross where we'd salt the pork down, which cost some money. I don't know why. Maybe you would know this better than me. Why didn't we salt down the beef? You can't do that?
I've seen
good question.
People doing it with lard.
With lard.
Preserving the beef with just in solid lard.
I think that's called confit. CONFIT.
And
a way to do
supposedly
that,
it holds a long time.
Yeah.
25, 30 year shelf life.
As a matter of fact, I remember the people coming across, like Christopher Columbus and that gang, they would, like eggs, things like that. They'd put it in paraffin.
Wax?
You could take an egg, a raw egg, and put it in paraffin. It'll last for years because you can't get air to it. I guess the same thing would be true with beef or anything. I guess that's what the Lord did, I guess. Just stops the water from stops the product from getting bacteria.
Yeah.
What was maybe some of your first jobs or big chores you had as a kid?
Well, every year we had, as a kid, we all had to contribute to the labor, with working in the garden. I guess my role more than anything was shelling peas and beans and stuff to get them ready to cook, whatever. Some of the earliest first jobs I guess I had was when a kid was, some of the neighbors, some of the farmers in the area planted those shallots and things like that. I had jobs where I would plant shallots. In fact, the darn rows looked like they were like 100 and 200 feet long. And you'd plant shallots. And
what you got paid?
25 cents a row. So, and I'm telling you couldn't see the end of the row either.
What a deal.
Yeah. So anyway, that was pretty much it. There were no paying jobs for kids or anything like that, that I was aware of at the time. It was mostly working with the family, working in farms and
to
stuff
get what you need.
Yeah.
That's the most interesting part.
Yeah, that pretty much was it. We were depending on ourselves for survival. And in that sense, I guess I was blessed all of my life, really, in that we had a family. And we never worried about food. We never worried about anything, because we always knew that we had one another for backup.
So you mentioned your dad, also named Earl, was in World War II, and that's why everybody moved in to the same house, because all the husbands and dads and grandpas were fighting.
Yeah, and there was no income. When Dad went in, matter of fact, I don't know if you want to hear about him, but I got a story to tell you about him.
Absolutely.
Dad was a pretty remarkable guy. He went to LT, which is a small school on 308 going toward Labadeville. And
how did he get there?
He had to walk.
Okay.
At the time, he wasn't living on highway. He and his, let me regress.
Yeah.
Okay, Dad's father died when he was a young boy. They were living on a plantation. It's called La Sainte Quarters, which was off of 308. It was a plantation. I don't know who owned the plantation, but anyway, there were a bunch of row houses where you had people that were working on the plantation had homes to live in. Well, his daddy died. He had an older brother, and when he died, to stay in those houses, you had to have people working on the plantation. Well, his daddy died, so there was no one working on the plantation. So his brother dropped out of school in the 8th grade and started working.
What was his name?
Lester.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, his brother started working on the plantation.
So that the family could have a place to live.
So that they could have a place to live. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, made a few pennies. She'd make filet for the gumbo.
Mm-hmm.
She would get the sassafras leaves, dry them, crumble them, and basically put them in Coke bottles and cap them and sell them. That's the money she made. That's what she did. And Lester worked on the plantation. My dad was younger. He continued going to school. And in those days, you had like pretty much multiple grades in one classroom. Dad was, I guess, relatively bright, so they skipped him a grade. And at that time, graduation was at the 11th grade. They didn't have 12 years of school. So Dad graduated from high school. He was 16 years old. During that period of time, during those high school years, he had a job working for Mr. Edmund Deremy, a lawyer in Thibodaux. His Edmund Deremy Jr. was the most recent one that you might have a memory of, but it was the old man Deremy that recognized that Daddy had some ability and encouraged my mother to send him to school. The only local university he had at the time was USL, Lafayette. So they had no money. So Daddy went to USL on a basketball scholarship. And he wasn't making enough money to eat, so he got a job as a waiter. Didn't have enough money to eat then, so he got himself a boxing scholarship.
Golly. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, what a hustler.
Yeah, so anyway, he got a boxing scholarship. He got through college on doing that, and he went through a 4-year program, and he graduated in 3 years. He was 19 years old and a college graduate.
And what year you think? This was in the late 20s, early 30s?
I would say the year he graduated, I was born, it must have been 37 or 38 is when he graduated from college.
And how did he meet Mama? He knew her before he left?
Yeah,
when
they were in school together. I mean, it was a local community. It was a little LT school. The building is still there. I don't know what they use it for anymore, but the building is there. And so when he got out of the service, they got married. He got a job, and he was principal. He was a teacher and got a job as principal of Lockport School. There was a school in Lockport where he got the principalship of that school. And the war broke out in 41, so he volunteered. And that's the point in time when we had to move in with.
So y'all were living in Lockport before that?
Yes, we lived in Lockport for a brief time, and the war broke out.
Gotcha.
So we had to move back. We had no other place to go, so we moved in with Grandma and Grandpa like everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. He volunteered to go in.
So that was your mom's grandparents that
My mom's grandparents. My grandmother on my dad's side was still living on La Sainte Quarter. Lester was still working at that plantation all that time.
Golly.
So anyway, that's Dad's story. That's who he was. And I guess because of that, I'm fortunate, I'm lucky, because in those days, there weren't that many people from around here going to college. How he ever managed to go to college, I have no idea. How he managed, there was no money. He didn't have any money. His mama didn't have anybody. But he did.
How did he get to Lafayette?
I would have guessed it was going to be by train. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't have any vehicle.
Right.
He had to go by train. So that's how he went.
Sheesh.
And as it turns out, he.
So how old were you and how long was he gone in World War II?
I was born in 39. I guess I didn't, for the first couple of years, of course, I have no memory of that. But he came back probably 45 or 46 after the war was over in the Pacific. He was fighting in the Pacific.
Gotcha.
So he probably didn't get back, I'd say, until about 46 or 47. So I would have been maybe 6, 7 years old.
Jeez.
When he got back.
And what was that like meeting your dad? Kind of. Because you probably didn't remember him when he left.
No, I didn't, because there was no time off,
Right.
When he was on a ship in the Pacific, and he couldn't take a break. He had to keep fighting.
Yeah.
So I have no memory of that really, except that those are some years that probably would have been some formative years that I wish I had with him. I didn't.
You know anything about his service?
Nothing except that he was in the Pacific. He was on
He was in the Navy?
In the Navy.
Okay.
The ship he was on were, I guess, a medium-sized vessel where they were landing craft, basically to discharge tanks, troops, that kind of thing, had to go in and put people on the ground. So that's the kind of vessel he was on. He was involved in fighting all the way even into Tokyo Bay, So, but he made it without a scratch and survived it.
Probably dropped off a lot of Marines, Shane.
Yeah. Any pictures?
No. Again, that's in your realm. Remember, in those years, they just didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
He did bring back one picture, though, or one postcard of Tokyo. I guess I should have brought that just to show you where they show what was left of Tokyo in 45.
Wow.
I think I had one building standing. That was it. But anyway, when he got out of the service, he had to, as it turns out, the building he was in, when principalship in Lockport, the building burned down. So when he got back, they had no building. He was no longer had a principalship there. And he was not able to get another principalship until, I guess, maybe 51 or 52. And the reason for it was soldiers were protected if they were drafted. You know, they would be entitled to their job when they got back. He volunteered, so he wasn't entitled to anything.
You see what you get?
Like that rule.
You see what you get?
So what did he do in that time? Was he still teaching?
Yeah,
Okay,
he started teaching.
Gotcha.
And another thing he did was, in fact, there were a lot of veterans in those days. There were a lot of people in this area that really couldn't even read and write.
Yeah.
And he volunteered to teach veterans, and he would teach night classes over in Choctaw to teach them how to read, write, that kind of thing. He did that after the service.
So just so everybody knows now, I am a fourth generation butcher, but I also taught classes at Nichols and Tulane, so I'm also a fourth generation teacher.
Yes, you are.
That's pretty cool.
Because, yeah, my great grandfather was a teacher and principal. Papa was also a teacher and principal. My mom, teacher, and then, yeah. So that's super cool. What else? What else to say about your dad, Paul?
Nothing except he was a great provider. And I think you are where you are. I am where I am because of him. Because in that time period, there weren't that many people that thought that the value of education. I look back at my cousins, let's say Lester's children. They didn't have the advantage that I had of seeing the potential of an education.
Yeah.
They dropped out of school and went to work. And there's no shame in it, but that was a thinking, that was a foresight.
Yeah.
Whereas in my case, I don't think I ever questioned that I was going to be a college graduate.
And that was unusual at the time.
And it was unusual. Not necessarily in my period, but for my dad's time, you worked
to survive. You weren't
successful. Thinking about anything except surviving, putting food on the table, because that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
You didn't buy it because you didn't have money.
Right.
So that was his thinking, and I guess it was Edmund Deramay, the old Deramay, who encouraged him and saw to it that he went to college. But he did it, and I don't know how he did it. I still don't know. It's remarkable that he did, but at least it gave me the impetus to go and get an education. Hence, it provided your mother, you realized the value of an education, and you went from there.
Yep. Okay, now let's talk about you. So where'd you go to high school?
What's that?
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Thibodaux High.
Okay.
Graduated in 1957.
And then did you go straight to college from there?
Yes. Yeah, I went to LSU at the time.
There was no Nichols yet?
There was a Nichols. At the time, I don't know as they provided very many 4-year degrees. It was like a junior college kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But anyway, yeah, I went to LSU. I went there, and I didn't graduate from LSU. I transferred back in my senior year to Nichols.
Okay.
And anyway, that's when your grandmother and I got married that year.
I need to know more about that. So where'd you meet her? Her name was Dorothy.
Yes. Trying to think when we first met.
Was it in high school? Was it in college?
No, it wasn't in high school because I was very little. I was at Thibodaux High School. She was at Mount Carmel Convent.
Oh, I didn't know that.
At the time, that's where the convent is where the Holiday Inn is right now. And as a matter of fact, her graduating class had 14 people in it.
Nice.
That's when you had a separation of girls and boys.
Yeah.
It was an all-girls school, and you had the boys' school was at Thibodaux College, which was off of Highway 1. It was in a different location.
Gotcha.
So I guess somewhere on the line we must have mingled and got to know one another. Can't tell you I know how. Anyway, we started dating. And
when you got back from LSU?
prior to, I was dating her while I was at LSU.
Gotcha.
So anyway,
What was dating like in 1958, say?
there weren't a lot of
What would you do?
there wasn't a lot. Go to drive in, go and get a burger or something at the 69, whatever, drive in or something like that. That's about it.
Cool.
You had the Women of the World dances, things like that.
Nice. Okay, so y'all got married when?
I guess in 62.
Right, so right after you graduated.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was my senior year of college, we got married.
Gotcha.
And your grandmother was teaching. She started teaching at Bayou Blue Elementary in Lafourche Parish in Bayou Blue.
Yeah.
And she did that until I graduated. And then she still continued to do that until we started having children.
Awesome. So you had my mom, obviously, was the oldest, Marie. And
Yes.
then Parent Kane came next, and then Parent Kyle.
Yes. As a matter of fact, another thing my dad did for me, as a matter of fact, he had bought some property to show you how things have changed. He bought property off of Highway 1. It was a big lot, 100 by 200, where his house is existing now. In addition to that, he had the property across the street called the Batur, which was on the buyer side. Well, when Dorothy and I decided we were going to get married, Daddy offered me the property to build a house on the buyer side.
Okay.
And I built the house on that side. And he helped me, and the more than helped me, he did most of the work, truly. But so I built a house there, and that's when we moved in and where Marie was born, your mother.
Okay.
She was born, that was her first house.
I didn't know that. Well, shoot. Let's talk about this. Because, you built that house. That's not something most people do or say.
No.
How did you build it? Why did you build it? How did you know how to build it?
I guess it's kind of like you. I'm the rat that knows my way through the maze. I don't know. It's a genetic thing, It really is. I did a lot of work, and I did a lot of observing in the way that I was raised. You go, if something broke, you had to fix it.
So it was a common skill set that a lot of people had?
No. I guess I'm an exception in some sense. Lester, my uncle, the one who was working on the plantation, was a plantation carpenter.
Okay.
And so he helped build my mom and dad's house that on that property I was telling you about. And I guess I observed, I worked with them, stuff like that.
And your dad learned at some point too.
My dad is similarly had really the same skills. He knew how to do things. In that time period, I guess you just had to observe and do, and you had to, as a helper too, you had to work. It's like your involvement as an adult. You learned as you went. You progressed. You observed. You asked questions. You learned what to do, and you do it. Shane, same way with you. I'm sure the same thing. You just, as an adult, you just know what your responsibilities are, and you just do it.
Yeah, but why not just get somebody else to build it?
It costs money. We didn't have money. I mean, we had no money, Bo.
Perfect.
My first job when I started teaching, my first salary was $3,200 a year. I would take home $220 a month.
And that's what you had to get by. And apparently that's not enough to build a house.
Not enough to do much of anything.
And this was after college.
That was after college.
What were some of your friends, your peers making that didn't go to college?
Most of them are the oil industry, of course. I have no idea what they're making, except that I'm sure it was a heck of a lot more than I was making, because there were welders and electricians and oil, roughnecks. They were making money.
When did that industry take off?
I would say probably a lot of it at that point in time, and that was a point too when Saudi Arabia and when oil production in that part of the world started to ramp up. there were a lot of people from this area really that went to Saudi Arabia and started working in the oil fields. A lot of the people down here they were just good, hardworking people, tough people. They knew how to work, and so they worked on the oil rigs. A lot of the guys. That's when Texaco was big around here. Not so much anymore, but they were, and everybody just went in that area.
Yeah,
and it provided a lot of opportunities for a lot of people to make money.
So besides teaching, what else? What other jobs have you ever had?
Oh man, I worked. One job I had was for Houston Contractors back at Shag Bay on a pipeline, just running a pipeline, that kind of thing, clearing waterways, that stuff. I worked for General Motors at one part of the time on floor planning of automobiles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
What was that
skip to
transition
the next
like?
thing, right?
How'd you get there?
It was whatever. I never just quit teaching to do that. This was summer jobs. I also had a job driving a Greyhound bus. That was an interesting job. Greyhound had a position for teachers. Greyhound at the time was a pretty big industry for transporting people. And so every summer they would hire teachers to work on what they call a reserve board. The reserve board was where when you put your name on a list, and whenever there was an overflow for a route for the New Orleans area, like if it's from New Orleans to Mobile, if they needed 2 bus drivers instead of 1, if your name was at the top, you got that job. You ran it to Mobile. If it was to go to Jacksonville, you ran it to Jackson. Wherever you had to go, that was your job. So I did that one summer. I worked for Core Lab, analyzing core samples.
This is all side hustle, Shane. This is him. He needs a few more dollars and he's off for the summer.
Right. And so are you finding these opportunities in the newspaper or through a buddy? Someone's telling you about this stuff?
Again, I guess it was job hustling. If you heard about a job, you applied for it. I did the core samples. I did the bus driving.
Do you help design automobile plans?
No, no. I did work with GM for a while. I did work with E.J. Mitchell. I left teaching for a short period of time. I worked for E.J. Mitchell Company. It was a company out of Houston selling the Rabbler pump valves and Herberger compressor valves for the oil industry. So I did that for a while. That's probably the worst job I ever took, truly, because it kept me away from home. I had a route. I had a district where it ran all the way from Corpus Christi, Texas, all the way up to Jackson, Mississippi, 3 states, Arkansas, Louisiana. I left that job in a hurry. One day I'd always call Dorothy to see where she was and what was going, because since I was away from home. And when the last time I called her, she said, Kane, my middle son, or the middle child, had viral meningitis. Well, the word meningitis scared the hell out of me. I didn't know what that was, It didn't sound good.
It's not good.
No. So anyway, as it turns out, it's called viral meningitis, not the... But anyway, I got on the phone and I called Mitch, E.J. Mitchell, the company I was working for in Houston. I told him I was quitting, I was leaving, I was going to drive the car. I had a home base in Baton Rouge. So I told him I was going to leave the car at the office in Baton Rouge, but I couldn't go anymore. I had to quit. So I left that. And so those are the kinds of jobs. I would work a lot of summers with, you might know Andosek.
Eric Andosek?
Lou Andosek, Eric's daddy.
Okay.
He had a contracting company. He would do construction work. I worked with him doing construction work.
Like residential, like building houses?
Yeah.
So that's how that got started? Go ahead.
And you had already kind of developed your construction skills at this point.
Yes.
So he wanted you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was looking for carpenters, so I did that. So I did about anything that would pay money, I did.
Don't matter how much.
At this time, were you looking to stick with anything career-wise, or were you still in a hustling mindset?
Mostly it was trying to feed a family. I had 3 kids. I didn't want Dorothy to work. We wanted her to be home raising the children. So I had to make enough money, to do that. So I still wanted to teach. I like teaching. I still like teaching. That was a thing for me. So I would take whatever job I could during the summer months, to supplement my income. Then when I got a few dollars ahead, I started doing some other things instead of working and doing stuff for other people. I started constructing things, building spec houses that we could sell. So I did that with a partner. Frank Pugh is his name at the time. And I developed a little trailer park on the north side of near the Prospect Street Bridge in that area. So I did things like that, and built some apartments over across from Perkles over there. Built a couple of apartment buildings. So I started doing things that
Is that Gloria Street?
Yes, Gloria.
Okay.
Yeah, we had 2 apartments in there.
Were y'all the first to develop in there?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, way back when.
Is it the 2 right on the front corner?
No, it's those were developed later before they did all of that. It was, I forgot that, 208, 207, 213, somewhere, and that's the address in that area. Mm-hmm. And anyway, it was just, so I started doing that just to make money, but I still wanted to teach. So I do all that work during the summer and however protracted time after that,
Yeah, just build a quick 4-plex in 3 months with just you and your buddy.
Yeah.
What were the regulations like back then to build something?
I hate to say this in public, but there weren't very many. There were none.
Right. I guess that's what I would have assumed. It's
not too many.
It's a lot
like
easier, right?
As a matter of fact, the house Bo we moved to over in Houma, when you and your mama moved in,
yeah,
I drew Les plans on a napkin.
And just started, huh?
Yeah.
Get some wood and just start.
Yeah.
Boy, so that's nice.
My whole childhood, I remember Papa building houses over the summer. Mom would bring us out there and see him or whatever. I remember him building the house I grew up in. Did that provide more financial security for the family?
For you and your family, yes.
No. Specifically doing when
me,
you started doing it for yourself instead of for other people.
Yeah, it was because it did it. The biggest salary that I ever made while I was working was $50,000 a year as a principal.
Towards the end as a principal?
That's toward the end. I'm a multimillionaire right now. I'm not boasting about it.
And that's not from teaching.
And it's not
from selling corn.
And it ain't from growing corn and put it in the corn crib.
No, because, you just like the house in Florida, for instance, we built. Okay, I built that.
Him and Miss Ev built that.
Yeah.
Just the 2 of them.
And I bought the property for $80,000. I built a house for $50,000.
This was in early 2000? When was this?
We built it. We started building it, I guess, around 2000.
Okay.
We sold it last year for $550,000. So I pocketed $550,000 because I did it. That was my labor. That was my involvement in it.
Yeah.
So, and all the other houses, all the other things like the apartments, we built the apartments. We held on to those for a period of time. Then we sold them and pocketed the money. In the interim, we would collect in the rent. It cost us nothing because the rent would amortize a loan and would take care of expenses.
And the loan's pennies compared to if you had to pay labor to build it.
Yeah. The only money I ever made, or the only way I was able to accrue any money, was with my labor.
Yeah.
In other words, if you build a house for $50,000 and it's worth $100,000, then you made $50,000, even if you don't have it in your pocket. At some point, you got it money.
Yeah.
Was there anyone teaching you or kind of mentoring you along this journey of investing? And
no, not really.
Did you learn any of that in college?
No. I always figured my sweat equity would carry me through. If you work at it, you're going to come out. You can't pay a lot of labor because labor is going to eat you up on those kinds of projects. And I didn't have the expertise to hire people like I did on this last project. They wouldn't allow me to do the electrical and plumbing.
When was this?
Just this past year.
Months ago, yeah.
And you wanted to do all of it?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let you?
Well, they wouldn't let me do the electrical and I couldn't even put up a temporary service. The guy, I'm in the office applying for an electrical permit. I'm gonna do that, and the guy's sitting on the side of me, and he said, "Get yourself an electrician." I said, I can put up an electric. I can do that.
Been doing this my whole life, longer than most of the electricians.
Why don't you go eat in your truck, buddy?
Yeah. So I said, okay, I know how to do this. He said, no. He said, they make you take a test. St. Tammany does. You got to take a test, an electrical test. I said, well, I can pass a test. Yeah. So he says, no. He says, he's an electrical engineer at NASA. He could pass a test. I said, oh, Jesus Christ, man. So he can't pass the test. I'm thinking, well, Earl, you don't have a shot.
NASA electrical engineer can't pass it.
Yeah, at NASA.
Good luck.
Because, the NEC code book is about 2 inches thick. They don't want to know they're not going to give you a test on whether you know how to hook up wires to put up an electrical service. Mm-hmm. They want to know if you can pass this book.
Yeah. And meanwhile, how did that go letting somebody else do it?
So I paid somebody $600 to do it.
And how'd they do? Did anyone almost die?
He hooked the wires backwards. That's the guy that nearly got me killed.
That's perfect.
Hooked the wires up to the meter pan backwards so that when Papa was trying to put in the fuse, it was extra hot.
The fuses were hot. You never could take the fuses off.
Oh,
yeah.
You would have known better.
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
But they probably didn't ask that question in a test,
right?
Yeah.
Man, bet you could come up with a good test, huh?
Yeah.
Good. Wow. So you kind of learned as you went on your own as needed.
Yeah. That was pretty much it. Again, like I said, I think genetics has a good part in it. You learn how to do stuff. I think Beau is an example of that. He's learned how to do by trial and error. If he didn't know what to do, he called for him. Hey, Paul. I said, oh, geez, man, what the hell he wants to know?
Hey, so Shane, 2011-ish, I bought a house on Blake Court. It's got 4 apartments in the backyard. Shane currently owns it. But yeah, the house had been built in the early 50s. The apartments were built in the early 60s. And everything was just needed a lot of work. So Papa for the next 10 years got daily phone calls about how to do this, how to do that.
And Shane got the deal.
And Shane got it all fixed up, ready to go.
By the way, you still doing bed and breakfast? Man.
Airbnb, baby.
It's doing well. Doing very well.
Super. Again, that's part of a process of you being an entrepreneur. You just learn how to do stuff and you know what you need to do.
Yeah.
You do it.
Bo got a lot of the same calls that you got from Bo.
Yeah.
I call Bo, ask him the same questions. Sometimes he might actually ask you and then give me the answer and have me think that it was his idea.
Of course.
Yeah.
Most
of the time that's probably true.
Bo's slick, huh?
Oh yeah. But it's a lot of trouble for me because a lot of things that I want to hire someone to do, I know I'm like, man, Bo would know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then I got to dig into
just
it.
That makes you mad.
Yeah, I got to dig into it. And then I'm 7 trips to Lowe's after. I finally might call him.
But again, that's the point I'm making. Like Bo learned that through observing and doing and trial and error, Mm-hmm. I'm a pretty smart guy now because I did everything twice. You know,
Right.
I couldn't do it right the first time, but I got it right the second time.
Papa always told me that. So many times when we're doing something, I'm like, how do you know how to do this? He said, because I've done it wrong a bunch of times first.
Yeah.
Yep.
That really is the way.
Yeah, the only way.
Hey, speaking of doing stuff wrong, Paul, did you ever have any accidents while building all these houses, especially like beach houses and stuff where they're maybe way, way off the ground?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about some.
Oh, man. I can tell you about my Wile E. Coyote hat.
Yes, please.
You ever heard of that much thing?
Yes, sir.
Well, I have this place in Florida I'm building, okay? I'm doing all the work. I'm putting the roofing myself on building. So it's a corrugated roofing on Dura. It's a non-metal product, but so you have to be careful with it. You don't want to damage it. So I'm putting it up. I climb up on the roof. It's like 18 feet. The roof is like 18, 20 feet off the ground.
Because the house is on pilings.
It's on pilings. So it's like a 2-story building.
Mm.
So I get up there and I figure, well, it's getting hot, summertime. So I figure I'm going to get up early in the morning so that it's still cool and I'm not going to damage the roof. So I tie a rope around my waist and I had it tied at the peak. So I had something.
Just to be extra safe.
Be safe, you know. I'm into safety. So I get up there, I climb up on the roof, and I knew it was going to be cool. I didn't know it was going to be wet, you know, with all that, not with all that humidity and stuff. Got a lot of humidity in Florida, man. So anyway, I get up on the roof, I'm climbing up, and I start to slip, and I got no way to hold on. I can't catch, but I got a rope around my waist, and I got it tied. So I slipped to the edge of the roof, boom. So I said, oh, man, that's great, you know. So I'm like Wile E. Coyote. I look up at the rope. When I look up the rope breaks.
It's coming down. Did you watch it snap?
Yeah. So that was my Wile E. Coyote act. So anyway, I fall to the ground, bam. I said, Jesus Christ.
18 feet.
Yeah.
And how old were you at the time?
60-something. So anyway, about 20 years ago. So yeah, I was about 65 or so. Anyway, see this tooth here? It's not real. It swings me into the castle, into a scaffold. Bang. So knocked this one out. So anyway, I fall to the ground. After that, I look at the rope, you know, and I'm figuring, what kind of rope is this? It's a 3/16 Dacron rope. You can pull a car with that. Working load 90 pounds. I weigh more than 90 pounds. So anyway, it broke. The rope didn't hold me.
I guess ain't like it used to be, huh?
No. So
It's misleading.
they're serious about that working load, though.
Right. What'd you learn that day? What kind of lessons did you learn?
I did it again. I went back up.
Same way, huh?
Same way. I got a bigger rope.
I know what the problem is. I just needed a bigger rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have been great if it wouldn't have been for the big rope.
Yeah. It's way worse than he makes it sound, though.
I'm sure.
Slides off of the roof, and now he's swinging from the...
By himself.
Yeah, swinging from the rope that's 3/4 of an inch. How thick, Paul?
3/16.
Yeah, 3/16. So it's digging into your belly, right? It's like an extension cord. He's swinging, smashes his face into the scaffolding.
Knock the tooth out.
And then thinks, oh my God, thank God I tied this rope. That hurt really bad, but I'm going to be okay. Looks up, rope pops.
And not only that, I was flat enough that when I put it around my waist, I tied it with a slip knot.
But that felt good, huh?
Yeah, maybe he's lucky it popped.
Yeah, you're right. God showed me.
Squeezed you.
Evelyn couldn't have got me down.
I'd like to see how that goes.
Yeah.
Miss Evelyn, climb up on the roof and cut the rope.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
You're going to have to do it.
Oh, boy.
That's a good story.
Yeah. Any others, Paul? It seems like I remember you teaching me a trick when you're working on roofs to tie some ladders together.
Oh, Lord. We were working on father-in-law's house on Lagarde Street in Thibodaux, and it's a metal roof, corrugated tin. It's hard to get up. So, but if you put a ladder, one on each side, and tie the two together, where you have when the one's at the bottom, when one ladder's at the bottom, the other one's at the top. Well, I'm at the top of the ladder. The guy's at the bottom of the ladder on the bottom one. He forgets I'm at the top, so he gets off the ladder, so the top ladder slides down. So the rule to that, Shane, is be the man on the bottom ladder, not the man on the top ladder. See, I learned that lesson. You know, you learn a lot of stuff by being stupid.
Right. Well, I wrote this down earlier. I wanted to know about maybe your first time out of state. Yeah, you had mentioned some trains and buses earlier. What was your first time out of state? Did that happen as a kid or as an adult?
I guess I first recall, I guess, a vacation trip to Colorado with my parents, that kind of thing. As an adult, I guess our first trips out of state would have been probably to Florida. We always enjoyed going to Florida, going to Navarre Beach. We spent a lot of time on the beaches over there. Nice. In fact, when we first started going to Navarre Beach, they didn't have any buildings. The condos that they have now, they didn't exist. The only building they had on the beach at the time was a Holiday Inn on the beach. They used to have near the National Seashore, they had a campground, and we did a lot of camping over there. Nice. It was on the sound side, but you could walk across to the beach.
That's cool.
So, like I said earlier, I grew up doing a lot of camping with my mom and grandpa, but they did the same thing when my mom was young. So, tell me about your first camper.
Oh, man. I built one.
I knew it.
I had one of the first motorhomes around. I bought an old bread truck.
How much you bought it for?
Oh, probably $400 or $500. But those were some.
Did it come with the bread?
No, it was an old bread truck, and I did everything I could. I had a kitchen, I had a shower, had a toilet, had beds, the whole bit, and we'd go camping in that thing. It was nice.
Y'all ever get turned away?
Oh, yeah. First time we went to this place it was a wind-dig place, in Florida, and they thought, at the time, I think they were charging about $4 a night, that kind of stuff, really expensive. So we go in this place, and they wouldn't allow me in. It's homemade, man. I said, geez, how could y'all tell that,
God.
Turned me away.
I bet you were kind of proud of that, though.
Oh, man.
No. We said campers only, no bread trucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how old was Mom when you built that?
I don't know. She's probably not even a teenager. I don't remember for sure. We were living over on Idlewild at the time.
Yeah, so maybe like 10 years old, call it the early 70s?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Something like that.
Where'd y'all take that thing?
Most of the time we did it summers going toward Florida. We spent a lot of time on the beaches in Florida. I don't remember going too far north. I think might have gone up to Missouri or something like that in those areas. Most of the time it was where the land was flat. You wouldn't go too far, Had no 6-cylinder engine in it.
Imagine mapping out you're trying to get away from all the hills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can't do hills.
Mostly that's where we went, Florida.
All right.
That's so cool. What happened to the bread truck?
My brother-in-law wanted it. Gave it to him. Figured he deserved it. Uncle Joe.
Come on.
Yeah, he wanted
There's a
it.
lot of good Uncle Joe stories.
Yeah, no, you don't want. I'm not talking any Uncle Joe stories here. No.
What did he do with it? He lived in it? He used it?
He used it, and just passed around it, And toward the end, he died, and I don't know what happened to it after that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I can tell you another story about that old. Remember that the one you and I used to camp in, that little Coachman motorhome.
So I remember the camper. There was a camper first that you pulled with the Suburban.
Right. But,
which that Suburban is its own
Yeah.
It's its own podcast.
Yeah. But anyway, the coachman,
Yeah.
you know the guys who I sold it to. I sold it to the Tubes boys here, Michael and his brother. What the heck? Can't think of his name right now. Anyway, they bought it. They wanted to just potch around or have a place to go when they hang out at the games and stuff like that. So I told them, sure, you can have it. So I gave it to them because it was beat to hell. The wood, it started to rot, the water leaks. I never took care of it. It was exposed to the elements. So I gave it to them. And I said, okay, cranked it up. It started, ran fine. So I told them, yeah, come get it anytime y'all want. So I gave them the keys. They got it. They got it all the way to Highway 11. I live off of Highway 11, about a block or two. I got a phone call from him. He says, hey, camp was on fire.
I said, and that's your lesson for going take free campers.
So anyway, they come to find out, I guess there were a bunch of rat nests or squirrel nests on top of the manifold of the vehicle. And by the time they got it to the highway, it heated up.
Just hot enough. That's good.
So that ended their camping.
Did it burn down? Or just messed it up enough?
It messed up the interior. It messed up the cabin since, the way the configuration of the motor and all that was in there. So I just told them to haul it back to the house. They did. I still had insurance on it, so I filed an insurance claim and they gave me $7,000.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, I made $7,000 on that deal.
It's a good deal, actually. Worked out real good. Got any good stories about my mom?
We used to go out to Lake Verret, pull on, skiing and stuff like that, and pull them on tubes and all. She was a young girl, and I remember her in her little bikinis and all, and pulling her behind the boat on a rope. And we're going to town, and all of a sudden somebody else, hey, she's got a flag up. It was her bikini bottom. She was holding up at the top of her legs because her bikinis had fallen off.
What about, so going back to my grandpa Lester and that Bourgeois family. I know you remember him dropping meat off, but when was the first time you went to the store, and where was it? Was it where it's at now, or was it across the street?
No, it's where it is now.
Okay.
That would have been like in the mid 60s.
Okay.
Way back then.
Yeah. So from then, I guess what I'm wondering is, when did Papa's dad stop delivering meat? So not that you were a kid, but at some point y'all stopped getting meat from there, and then how'd y'all get meat after that?
As it turns out, I recall Daddy doing this. There were limited refrigeration. I don't know if you remember, but there was a guy who built a refrigeration place.
The ice house on St. Patrick.
Yes, yeah. Over there. And so Daddy would rent a unit to preserve or to put food in.
Oh, that's what Miss Kathy and Miss Karen did too. Their parents, the Abears.
Yeah.
Do you know them or remember them? They had the spot where West Main Pizza was on St. Mary. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. It was across the street, on the Bayou side.
That was Miss Kathy and Miss Karen, the twins that worked here. That was their parents. They had a meat market, but I think a big part of their business was renting out cooler space.
They did. Actually, that's what they did.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember the configuration or anything like that, but I do know that we didn't have the ability Daddy still didn't have the ability to preserve food like that. So we'd buy meat in quantities, like maybe go to an auction and buy a quarter calf or a quarter of a side of beef or something, and preserve it and put it in their place. That's how we preserved meat.
This was after World War II when your dad came back?
Yes, yeah.
That's really interesting.
So cool.
That
like
whole
a storage
business.
Like a mini storage for meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, the building is still there. I don't know what in fact, at one time, I think Dave LaBeouf had tried to start up a pizza place in that building.
Yeah, it was West Main Pizza.
Yeah. Well, it's not there anymore. He sold it. But that was the building that all of those coolers and stuff were in. That was the original building.
So how did you access them? Like they had to be open and you had to go inside and they'd let you in kind of thing?
Yeah, you had to go in through the interior. There was no exterior. It wasn't like it was like a
Outside door that was padlocked or something? Yeah.
No, you had to go into the building.
Gotcha.
And I don't know what the costs were. Daddy did that. I had no idea. So that pretty much was how people, preserved food or were able to do the beef, the market like that.
Nice. Oh, Shane. So don't forget that Papa was your principal.
Right. Schriever School, Schriever Elementary.
He was a wimpy kid.
I was tiny. I was a small little sack of peas, huh?
He had blonde hair too.
Oh, yeah.
Very blonde.
Yeah. Cotton top.
Schriever School was kindergarten through third. No pre-K, right?
No.
No pre-K.
No.
And
I don't think you were there that long, were you?
just 3 years.
I don't remember you being there that long.
K through 3. You were my principal for kindergarten, first, and maybe second. And
Okay.
then we got someone new maybe my third grade year.
Okay. Because
Do you remember who took over after you?
A woman, Mrs. Chauvin.
Chauvin, yep. She, if I remember correctly, she wore combat boots.
Yep.
I remember that.
How long were you the principal there, Paul?
I guess about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
experience, as a matter of fact. And that was one of my best teaching experiences ever. I enjoyed Schriever community. It was, a lot of family-oriented people, just good old hard-working people.
This is a good question. When did they get away from paddling kids?
It was way after Papa retired.
After you left, Shane.
Far after. But seriously, until when? The 2000s?
I mean, when I was in high school, we got paddled.
That was 2000s.
2005.
5?
I'm trying to think when I left Schriever.
Well, if you were in second grade, that'll help.
Yeah. Had to be 93,
I quit.
94.
I
Should've been
left.
like 10. Oh, no.
I retired in 97.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So, probably about 2000 or so is when they started the no corporal punishment stuff. I think the superintendent at the time was Liz Skirto.
One story I have, I rode the bus. My mom lived right there in Schriever. And I rode the bus. And there was one day where the entire bus got called to the principal's office over the intercom.
Oh, man.
It was if your student rides bus, whatever, have them report to the principal's office.
Uh-oh.
So, and I've never been called to the principal's office before this. I was a good kid. So the whole bus, which is, I don't know how many seats on a bus, it must have been 30. Must have been 30 kids. So we're all waiting on the side of the principal's office. I think there was like a little, almost like a bench, like a church pew style bench. So we're waiting there, maybe for quite some time. And that might have been on purpose. That might have been just to spike some nerves a bit. But we all got called in there and we didn't know what it was for. And we get in and we all had to sit down and there was a TV with a, VHS player. And it must have been you and it must have been our bus driver. But we were told to sit down, turn the lights off, keep quiet, don't move, and watch what's on the TV. So they pressed play and it was the video surveillance of our bus. And we had to watch what was happening on our bus. And hey, everything was happening. There was kids, there was throwing things, there was kids jumping over the seats, running under the seats, running back and forth, fighting, beating, wrestling in fun, but just terrorizing the bus. And I guess the bus driver had enough and gave you the video and you had to watch it. But we all had to watch it too. And then we all got paddled. And we had the entire bus. We had to line up. And it was a quick one, I don't know what it was, 1 hit, 2 hits. But I remember sitting on the wall and you could hear what was happening in the room. And it got scarier and scarier as you got closer to the front of the line. And you knew it was your turn to go in.
That's why I got tennis elbow, man.
Yeah. And I think you even you might have had a special paddle. Do you remember that?
I had one that looked like a bat. Was that the one?
I thought it was something with holes drilled in it. I could be wrong.
No, I never had that.
But man, what a different time, huh? What a different time. I never went back in that room though. I can tell you that.
That's not true of all the people that went to Schriever.
Right. Some of them been in there several times.
But it straightened out a lot of them.
Yeah. Worked for me. I didn't want to be called. I didn't want to do anything that would have me called to the principal's office.
You were a good kid. You had a good mama.
Great mom.
Yes.
That's a big part of it.
Yes.
You have any principal stories or even teaching stories? I hear one of our aunts taught in New Orleans, and I've heard some horrific stories of what goes on in there, and there's, just lack of discipline. And
not really. The truth of the matter is, every school I've been in, and I went in some that were pretty tough, but my one take being a principal is I was teacher and principal for 34 years. I can't name you 5 bad kids. Kids are not bad. Parents don't know how to handle, and they don't discipline kids, and they don't teach them the right thing. If a kid's got good parents, if he's got a good family structure, he won't do anything wrong. If he doesn't have that, he'll do anything wrong. Because as I was growing up as a kid, I knew I was accountable all the way from my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my mama, my daddy, my grandma, everybody. I was accountable to a whole family. I was not accountable. I was responsible and accountable. Not that I was perfect. I sure as hell wasn't, but I think that's what's lacking with kids today. As far as Schriever School, I thought it was a great school. I thought it was a great kids. I can't say that it was wild. It was not. They were disciplined. They were what you expect kids to be doing. So all of my experience with all of those kids have been good experiences, good communities. Loved every minute of it.
I wonder how much it's changed. I wonder what it'd be like if you went sit in a principal's office at Shreve School today.
I'd probably get fired. I think the kids' families have changed. You don't have the family structure you used to have. And that's the key to kids. You look what's happening in those big cities. 70% of them don't have mama and daddy and don't know what's going on. They're roaming the streets at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You see a kid 15 years old shooting somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning. Why is he out at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
When you were 15 years old, you weren't going to be out at 3 o'clock in the morning, I promise you.
Mm.
So you couldn't even think about going wrong. It's
true.
I think that's the real issue with the family structure is broken down, and until that gets straightened out, it's not going to get better. We're lucky that we lived in communities where pretty much we had good family structures. That helped. But as far as the kids are not bad. They need direction.
Another thing I've always wondered about, Paul, is these days it's rare for men to get into teaching. In fact, growing up, I would say most of my teachers were women, but there were a few men. Most of them were coaches, though, that were just teaching because.
That's changed dramatically. When I started, I'd say probably better than 50% of the teachers were men.
Yeah.
I had a lot of men teaching. The hierarchy, too, the principalship and assistant principals were mostly men. Now I'd say the majority of them are women.
For sure.
So that's changed. As a matter of fact, I got to compliment my daddy, too. He was made principal of Thibodaux Junior High, and he was instrumental in appointing the first assistant principal, a woman, as assistant principal of a junior high school.
Jeez.
He did that. Her name was Miss Heard Carnegie. The Carnegies, Skipper Carnegie's, I guess, great aunt. So, but anyway, yeah, it's different. So I don't think that's the reason for the lack of discipline that you have.
Yeah.
I think it's parental breakdown. That's the cause of the chaos.
What do you do to fix it?
Go to church.
I think the federal government, and I'm going to get into politics here, but I think the federal government early on started trying to help people. And when I was growing up, there was no federal government to help me. The only thing that could help me were my parents, my grandparents. Now, you don't have that, so what do you have to help you? The federal government, and there are a lot of social programs, so therefore you don't rely on family. You're not dependent upon a network of people to help you. You're depending on the federal government to give you something. That, I think, is the thing that's done the most to destroy the family. Because if you can depend on Uncle Sam to give you a check instead of Grandpa growing you some beans, that destroys the family. The federal government has destroyed our family, or has helped to destroy the families.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of like good intentions gone wrong, you know?
Yeah, I don't think anybody intended for that to happen.
Right.
There was like, kids need to eat, so therefore let's help them. Well, then it gets to be, well, then the whole family needs something to eat, so let's help them. But sooner or later, then those people, and there's nothing wrong with those people except that they then become dependent on a government instead of a family as a network of support. You need the family. Without a family, you don't have much of anything. And I've stressed that with you I don't know how many times.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest thing you got in the whole world is your family. Without that, if you don't have that, you don't have anything.
That's a fact.
Yeah. If you have too much help, you don't need much skill.
That's true.
You don't need to learn. You don't need to.
But then you learn not to be I don't like the federal government gives me something. I don't have to contribute anything to it. When I was growing up, at that point in time, we needed food. I depended on my grandpa to provide me with food, but I had to contribute to that.
Mm-hmm.
I had to peel some beans. I had to peel some peas. I had to put up cans. I had to plow. I had to cut the weeds, stuff like that. So you had to be a contributor to it. Now you don't have to be a contributor. Don't even have to pay taxes because you'll get money back. So it's the federal government has, with all the best of intentions, created a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So in case y'all couldn't tell from this podcast, one thing that I hope you all did get to understand is that my grandpa is truly a jack of all trades. And I think that that's become lost in later generations as society pushes us to specialize. So like the way to succeed now, or the key to success, is becoming like really good at one thing. But Papa is like a rare combination of being really intelligent and really hardworking. And as you've heard, he can, run a school from an administrative standpoint, but he can also teach any of the classes. He can fix anything that breaks in the school, or he could rebuild it from the ground up by himself. The design, the carpentry work, the plumbing, electricity, all of it. And it turns out he could also drive all the buses if he needed to. But growing up with you, even into adulthood, you've passed on like not just these individual skills, which are useful and important, but more importantly, the mindset that I can do anything that I set my mind to, whether that be build a shed in my backyard, remodel apartments, or run a successful business. So I have 3 questions to finish up this podcast. The first one is, what advice do you have for me going forward?
I'll give you something that one of my, not a teacher, but somebody that told me. Every problem in the world has a solution. Every problem. Not just a math problem. Any problem. And if you can't solve it, it's because you're too stupid.
God, boy, way to just put the pressure on, huh? I like it, though.
No, every problem has a solution. If you can't figure it out, work hard enough till you get it, till you finally solve the problem. If not, then you're too stupid.
I like it.
All right.
All right. So my kids are still really young, but if you can imagine 20 years from now, what advice would you have for them?
Again, I think they need to be family oriented, as I think they are. The most important thing in the world for them are their brothers, their sisters, their mamas, their daddies, their grandpas. Those are the most important things. Because this world is changing and it's evolving in such a way that with AI, we don't know where things are going to eventually evolve. They need to be flexible. They need to be hardworking. They need to have a sense of responsibility to family, period.
Awesome. And more generally, what do you think is important to pass down? Like, well, you answered that question. What's important to pass down to later generations is that.
Yeah, because you can't, at this point in time, in my time, it was easier to predict outcomes or to predict what was going to happen. I grew up in a time when you didn't even have jet engines. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have television. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have water. We didn't have gas. We didn't have any of those things. Now they've got all of that. It's a taken for granted thing, but then they've got to be flexible in knowing, in not knowing the outcome even, because again, with this, things are going to evolve right now at such a rapid rate. I don't think you can make predictions about the future, about what in terms of a career. Things are going to change.
Yeah. What if you go into the cooler rental business,
Yeah.
Invest all your money into that. And the next thing you know, everybody's got one in their house.
Yeah. Yeah. But like right now, you got more computer power in my cell phone than NASA had when it sent up the first spaceship.
Yeah.
You don't know how things are going to evolve. And with this AI, I'm telling you right now that I believe that things are going to evolve at such a rapid rate in medicine, especially medicine, I would think, with all the money that's going to be poured into research, in terms of progress that they're going to make with the human experiences. It's going to be tremendous. You're lucky to be living at this point. I wish I could live another 20 years to see where we're going to be, but I'm not. But
you never know. How old was Mama?
Oh, I'm in the last decade of my life. I mean, that's a fact, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that, but it'd be interesting to see, like your kids, the world they're going to be exposed to is not the world that you're going to see right now. I promise you.
You already see it happening like day by day.
Yeah. And it's going to have with this AI and the money that's being poured into it, especially in medicine, man, things are going to change at such a rapid rate that you're not going to believe it. Disease, I think people are going to live a heck of a lot longer in that sense, because the genetic component of diseases is going to be eliminated, I promise you. To where people are going to live for a lot longer period of time.
Hopefully that comes sooner than later then.
Yeah, it does. It does.
What else you got, Shane?
How do we get everyone in the world to listen to this?
They need to hear it, man. There's some things in here that everyone needs to hear.
Serious.
And to know that we are, Papa's old, but he's not that old. He's almost 85. And just the amount of things that he has seen and experienced is unbelievable. If you go back 85 years ago, this world doesn't even look remotely the same.
Mm-hmm. No, you didn't. Like I said, we didn't even have television.
Electricity. What would you have plugged it into?
The problem with electricity,
No,
it was abundant and it was there. The problem is with World War II, you need every house that has electricity needs a step-down transformer. They were building tanks. They couldn't build transformers. So you didn't have the infrastructure to support all of that.
Yeah.
When
did y'all get electricity? Shortly after World War II?
After World War II, Daddy was the first electrician I knew. He came down there and he ran one wire right down the middle of the house. And he pulled a pull train light.
I bet that was cool.
Was it insulated wire?
Yeah, it was insulated.
Okay.
Yeah, it was insulated wire. Then Grandpa got all excited because he had an electric bill. That was $3 a month.
Hey, that's a lot for just a light. It's not you were running the AC.
No. That was the first electric appliance we had, was an electric toaster. You put the toaster in, and then it heats it up, and you had to be careful. Like you burn the bread and you burn the house.
Do you remember that light coming on for the first time?
Not really.
He had seen lights in other buildings,
but
he just didn't have it at a house.
But in your house, man, that's something.
Yeah, but that wasn't a big thing for me. No, I don't remember that. All I know is we had it.
Jeez.
Did everybody complain all summer long that they were hot?
We we sat on the porch mostly. Just
because I hear a lot of hots at my house, and it's not hot.
Mm-hmm. You need a porch.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks for having
You sound very sharp.
me. Getting dull about it, Shane.
I can't tell. I can't tell.
Thanks.
This is awesome. Really cool.
Appreciate the time with you guys.
Yeah, so much fun, Paul. Love talking to you.
Okay, thank you.
See.
So these days, Papa is getting a little older. He's actually battling cancer right now. And his new wife, we call her Ma Ev, they got married. They've been married probably close to 25 years now. She's dealing with some dementia. So, time's passing. We're all getting older. And it was really great to sit down with Papa today and hear some of those old stories. He's got the personality where you never know if he's dealing with anything. So, man, it's just, it's so cool to spend this time and hang out. Yep. Thanks, Paul.
All right, that's it for this episode of the Miracles in Meat podcast. We ask that you share it with at least one person in your life that you think needs to hear it. If you got a little something from it, you got some little goose pimples, or it just gave you some feel goods, send it to someone else. Let them feel that too. And if you loved it, please leave us a 5-star review. That'll really help out. And if you only loved it like 4 stars worth, please do not leave a review. Same thing with the 1 through 3. Not interested in any of those, only 5 stars. If you have any personal questions or comments about the episode, shoot them over to Bourgeois Meat Market on Facebook or Instagram, and we'll reach back out. And if you have any ideas for any cool future guests, please shoot those over too. We're always interested in hearing who else is out there and what kind of cool stories we might be able to bring into this place. See you next time. Thanks for listening.